The video game industry continues to rally around Ukraine through these trying times, with both Xbox and Epic Games raising millions of dollars for the country, actions that garnered a thank you from Ukraine's vice prime minister. For the last couple of weeks, we've seen various Ukrainian game companies react to what is happening within their borders, and recently one of the biggest game studios, GSC Game World, made the difficult decision to move development of Stalker 2 from Kyiv to Prague. It was also understandably announced that at the moment development has shifted to the sidelines as they focus on ensuring the safety of their employees and their families. The highly anticipated Stalker sequel did receive a notable change recently though, with the game retitled from Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl to Stalker 2 Heart of Chornobyl. The change is obviously very small, but Chernobyl is the Russian spelling while Chornobyl is the Ukrainian spelling, which considering everything that has transpired, the change kinda makes sense. Arguably one of the biggest surprises in gaming history, Elden Ring has revealed sales numbers and they are huge. Publisher Bandai Namco was reportedly expecting around 4 million copies sold in the game's first 5 weeks after release, but it looks like From Software has just absolutely destroyed those initial expectations, with Elden Ring selling 12 million copies in just around 3 weeks, which is just insane, but goes to show the enormous interest in one of the best reviewed games ever. A game that I just beat after 70 or so hours. Look out for a video of sorts on Elden Ring in the not so near future. One of the other big releases of 2022 is going to be Bethesda's Starfield, and there is a ton of excitement and anticipation for this space sci-fi RPG. Personally myself, I'm still remaining skeptical, especially following the warm piss that was Fallout 76. Regardless, just a few days ago we received a new update from Todd Howard and company. They again showed off new concept art and shared some interesting details. Howard made mention of the advances in tech allowing for more realistic characters and additionally stated, "It's nice with Starfield to go back to some things we didn't do, the backgrounds, the traits, defining your character, all those stats. I think there's so many games now that do those things, that people are ready for something that does a lot of the things that older hardcore RPGs do, something that we used to do, doing those again in a new way." One example that was brought up was that Starfield would be using an evolved version of Oblivion's persuasion system, and that is encouraging. I really do hope that Bethesda is looking back to their roots as a developer, understanding and utilizing the mechanics that made many of us fall in love with their games. Within this sit-down, we did also see some discussion on the factions, and the keep it simple stupid guy, if you don't know what I'm referring to, look it up, brought me back to reality and reminded me to be cautious, especially until we see some actual gameplay. It is worth mentioning that Fallout 4 Far Harbor's lead designer Will Shen is the lead quest designer on this game, so that's another at least encouraging piece of news. Anyway, before we proceed forward, today's video is brought to you by Displayed. As most of you know by now, one of my favorite partners to work with, as this is a product that I love and use to decorate my office. Displays allow me to express the passions that I have and also feel inspired with whenever I am creating content. Paper or canvas, in my opinion, nothing comes close to Displayd's metal posters, which comes in different sizes, finishes, and frames. Displayd boasts over 1 million designs from areas like video games, manga, movies, comics, nature, history, and much more. When purchasing Displays, you can expect prints on demand, with each signed by the master of production, an easy to set up magnet mounting system which removes concerns over damaging your walls, and fast delivery with shipping coming from the EU and having an expected delivery time of just 4 to 5 business days. From Assassin's Creed to Fallout to The Witcher to Star Wars, Displayed has a number of partners which have provided beautiful prints from iconic franchises, some of which are on my walls. If you're looking for more recommendations, such as this unique Skyrim print, which is a new favorite of mine, I have my own collection lists composed on my Displayed profile for you to check out, and if you are interested in getting a Displayed, follow the link in the description down below. You'll be helping to support the channel with each purchase, and for the next 2 weeks you'll receive a 23% discount if you get 1 or 2 Displays, and if you get 3 or more, you'll receive a 27% discount. Anyway, big thank you to Displayed for sponsoring the video. Arguably one of the worst big releases of 2022 so far, Platinum Games and Square Enix's Babylon's Fall has no plans to reduce the scale of development, and that would be a pretty big mistake. A game that peaked at less than 1,700 players on Steam and is now down to a few hundred players, not to mention the mixed reception on Steam and the 42 out of 100% critic review score average, with just 4% of critics recommending this game, Babylon's Fall has fallen. It's a dud. It's also a great representation on why every fucking AAA game studio does not need to develop an MMO. Platinum Games has maintained that despite the horrendous launch, the game is not quote-unquote in danger, and again, maybe it should be. Also, Square Enix, please dear God, revive Deus Ex, you cowards. I'm going to keep on saying that every single video I talk about this company. Rocksteady has not released a game since 2015, and it looks like the wait will be a little longer, as Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, their next game, has been delayed out of 2022 to spring of 2023. There's not much I can really say about this delay other than the fact that I'm sure there is a lot riding on the success of this game, and it most definitely is of the utmost importance to get this right. As we've seen the last few years, far too many games being released clearly unfinished and rushed. So at the end of the day, hopefully this means a better day one product for gamers such as myself and you. Now, another company that shares a similar name, Rockstar Games, recently launched a remaster that had come with many question marks before it released, also a lot of hostility. That was the next-gen versions of Grand Theft Auto 5. After the GTA trilogy debacle that came up months ago, many wondered if Rockstar would look to add further resources to this expanded and enhanced edition, giving fans maybe a proper and worthy upgrade. Unfortunately, that didn't really happen. From what I've seen and what many have stated, this new version is just alright, and would have been far better received if this was a free upgrade, which is what it should have been. The game certainly looks and runs better, but compared to the upgrades and enhancements we've seen other AAA developers give to their older titles, this still falls under the category of disappointing. All eyes now turn to Grand Theft Auto 6, which probably will receive its first teaser by the end of the year. Let's just hope that Rockstar shows more care with the most highly anticipated upcoming game. The PlayStation Jim Ryan era continues to bring new acquisitions, new censorship of horror games, and also one of its biggest blunders in years. Gran Turismo 7, a racing game, has released, and it simply is a greedy disaster. Ryan has made quite clear under his leadership he wants PlayStation to have a bigger focus in the future on live services, and this racing game is a great representation on how that could go terribly wrong. Gran Turismo 7 was met to mostly positive reviews from critics, but fans are in an uproar, with the game being review bombed on Metacritic, an 87 out of 100 critic average versus a 1.5 out of 10 user average. Ouch. So you might be wondering, why is there such a stark contrast? And if you guessed greedy microtransactions that reviewers didn't have to deal with, you guessed right. Added right after launch, following the EA, FIFA, and Madden path, once the reviews were written, it's been found that if you want to buy all the cars using real money in Gran Turismo 7, you will have to spend more than $3,000, with some cars even costing as much as $200 alone. The alternative to all of this is, as you might expect, a long and tedious grind of hundreds of hours of gameplay, and just ridiculous. Fortunately, the developers were so generous and understanding that they implemented a new update recently which drastically reduced in-game currency, forcing players to grind even more to get enough credits to purchase new cars. As you might expect, this update in turn really ignited the revolt against Gran Turismo 7 and has even led to some players discovering and sharing exploits to earn enormous amounts of in-game currency to bypass Sony's ridiculous greed. Developer Polyphony Digital's response to the outrage surrounding monetization has been laughable, with essentially a sorry not sorry statement from the company's boss. A statement that almost kind of mirrors that of what EA did a couple of years ago with Star Wars Battlefront 2, the whole give you a sense of pride and accomplishment with spending enormous amounts of cash. Now, it remains to be seen if anything will change, but there are many other issues here, such as a recent outage of over 30 hours, and with this being online only, that means no one was able to play. There's also features from past games stripped from this one, such as being able to sell cars, although hilarious enough, the official PlayStation Network store page mentions this as a feature. Some false advertising, I suppose. This is a giant mess for Sony, and thus far the company has neglected to make any sort of response. Now, speaking of controversy, Sony recently held a State of Play exclusively for Hogwarts Legacy, and it actually looks pretty darn good. For many, this is their most highly anticipated game of 2022, a wizarding RPG set in the Harry Potter universe, and that alone appears to be the issue for many others. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter books, has become a polarizing figure the last couple of years, and many want boycotts of any and everything that she's connected to. That includes this game, which, might I add, she has zero creative role in. Rowling is a billionaire and that's not going to change whether you do or don't buy the game. If anything, the only people hurt by this could be the developers of this game, the ones that have made quite clear that they have complete creative freedom, thus why trans character creation is happening. Regardless, many gaming websites have made their views quite clear, and in my opinion, even if this game is a 10 out of 10 best game ever, it ain't getting those scores. And yes, that's just because of Rowling. We've already seen outlets like Forbes saying, I don't know how to feel about Hogwarts Legacy, Fanbyte's editor is refusing to give any pre-release coverage, which is funny considering their website is owned by Tencent, and IGN reviewer said it's too bad they couldn't have just made a cool open world magic school game without using a license created by that. Like, you can make your own fantasy magic worlds. I promise no one has a monopoly on that idea. GameSpot and The Gamer wrote essays on why you should feel bad if you buy Hogwarts Legacy because of Rowling, and it goes on and on and on. There's also The Gamer trying to invent new things to get angry about, and many still attacking a former senior developer for having lukewarm political views, which ultimately forced him to quit because of the outrage mob and gaming sites basically slandering him and skewing his actual views. As I said before, Hogwarts Legacy is looking pretty good. Based on some of the footage, I had microtransaction concerns, but those are thankfully laid to rest with the developers confirming the game would be free from that nonsense. There also won't be any multiplayer. This is a full-blown single-player RPG. Regardless of all of that, regardless of the quality, this is going to be the most controversial game in years, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the media handles this when we get closer to release. I honestly thought that the biggest Witcher news this week was going to be the fact that the last secret within The Witcher 3 was discovered, a secret that took about 7 years to discover, and within the actual game it took 7 years. But that in fact has been overshadowed over the announcement that the next Witcher game is officially in development. With the tagline, "A new saga begins," and it appears like over 316,000 likes, just goes to show how many people are very excited about the future of this Witcher franchise. CD Projekt Red said that the next Witcher installment is in active development, but that's not where they stopped. They also teased a little bit about what this new saga will be about, whether that includes Ciri, Vesemir as the main protagonist, or a custom character, maybe a new school. We don't really know at this moment. But that wasn't really where they wanted to concentrate their attention on with this announcement. It was actually the fact that they are moving away from their Red engine, their very own proprietary engine, to Unreal Engine 5, beginning a multi-year strategic partnership with Epic Games. That obviously immediately came with some concern because Epic Games, as most of you know, has been making some pretty big moves in the PC gaming world the last couple of years, especially in regards to exclusivity, something that CDPR immediately shut down as a possibility for this next Witcher installment. But we did get this teaser image in which it says The Witcher, a new saga begins, and a lot of people have been getting a little confused about this image because this appears to be like a cat medallion, but that is not actually the case based on what we saw within The Witcher 3. And as far as I understand, the School of the Cat doesn't really exist in the books, but in the games, obviously, that is a big thing in The Witcher 3. And we have this, what appears to be like a lynx, which obviously is from the cat family, so maybe this is a different new school. Whether this game is going to be taking place in the future past The Witcher 3's events or maybe in the past, who knows, but we'll have more time to speculate on that in the future. Just a very quick little intermission I wanted to add after recording, and it's that CD Projekt Red have confirmed that it is in fact a Lynx medallion. Just a reminder that the House of the Lynx does not exist in the Witcher universe, at least officially. There's some fan fiction online, but what that indicates to me is that there is going to be a new school. Could it be that Ciri, who has a cat medallion, has decided to reform the House of the Cat into the House of the Lynx, and maybe this is a sequel of sorts years later after The Witcher 3? Maybe, but it's too early to say for sure. We did get some further detail from CDPR's PR director in which he said the game's not going to be called The Witcher 4. I mean, this is the 4th installment, so that's what people are going to refer to it until an actual name is given. The game will not be exclusive to one storefront, and it was our initial confirmation of a new saga in the Witcher franchise. Right now, we are not discussing any specifics in terms of story, characters, mechanics, or plot details, but obviously they give a little bit of a tease there. Now, furthermore, we did get an explanation from CDPR's chief technology officer on the decision to ditch Red Engine for Unreal Engine 5, and this is what he had to say. It is vital for CD Projekt Red to have the technical direction of our next game decided from the earliest possible phase. As in the past, we spent a lot of resources and energy to evolve and adapt Red Engine with every subsequent game release. Now, additionally, we did get an announcement on who is going to be leading development on this next Witcher installment, and that is going to be Jason Slama, who will be serving as game director. He was a UI programmer on The Witcher 3, and most recently directed Gwent the Witcher card game. And on Twitter, with this announcement, Slama responded to a user who brought up CDPR's past history of poor working conditions, in which he committed, saying that there would be no crunch happening on his watch. Ultimately, why this announcement is happening now is that this is going to serve as a tool to recruit new people to join the CDPR team to develop this next Witcher installment. Now, it is worth mentioning that as I investigated months ago in my Cyberpunk 2077, I think it was 9 months later video, I found that over half of the Witcher 3 developers are no longer at CD Projekt Red, and that's due to a multitude of reasons: crunch, just other people looking for better pay, and all kinds of other reasons. But ultimately, the same developers that made The Witcher 3 will not be developing this game. And as we've seen, The Witcher 3 game director, along with a few former CDPR developers, have moved on to make their own game studio. I believe it's called Red Wolves, and they currently are working on their own new game, which is a dark fantasy story-focused open-world AAA RPG, with one of Cyberpunk 2077's lead writers serving as the narrative director on this new title. So yeah, CD Projekt Red has been bleeding a lot of talent over the last couple of years, which is very concerning for the future of this company. So I do gotta say that this announcement really isn't too surprising, but I do think that the move from Red Engine to Unreal Engine 5 is probably for the best. I have talked with CD Projekt Red developers who worked on Cyberpunk 2077, and many of them pointed out that the engine, working with it, was an absolute nightmare, and there's just so much more work would have to go into it with keeping it up, and they just don't have the manpower for it. I've talked about this again in that past Cyberpunk 2077 investigation video, but there's just so many programmers that have left the company, especially engine programmers, and CDPR has been relying on a lot of junior and new talent, and that just isn't going to work. So I can't say I'm too shocked that they've moved to Unreal Engine 5, but I certainly understand that there's a lot of people very upset by this move. We've seen comments such as this one: "That's a pretty big shock considering how proud they've been of their engine in the past. Cyberpunk must have been truly a nightmare." Another user saying Unreal Engine 5 instead of Red Engine. "Does this sound like a red flag to anyone else? CDPR have been developing the Red Engine for over a decade. A lot of time and money down the drain to abandon it now. Wonder if this has to do with the mass exodus during Cyberpunk 2077. New talent prefers Unreal Engine 5, and also just an engine that they don't have to constantly update and have to make changes to and such. It's just a lot easier with Unreal Engine 5. I know we saw another comment: "Didn't the director of The Witcher 3 leave and found his own company already? LMAO, this isn't going well. Very obvious stunt to try and get back any sort of credibility." And like I've said over the last couple of years since Cyberpunk 2077's release, this is the reality that CDPR now lives with. There's a lot of skepticism with them moving forward, and that's just because of how they launched that game. Now, interestingly, the Digital Foundry guys did have a very different reaction to this news. One of them saying, "I found Red Engine kind of really great. Visually, Cyberpunk 2077 is the best looking open world game I have seen. With the ray tracing integration, it is also forward looking. CDPR has spent about a decade plus creating the tools for open world, and they drop it for Unreal Engine 5. Quest logos, see multi-threading, cinematics, object state permanence through saves, animation, and more has reached a great level with Red Engine in Cyberpunk 2077. I'm not a big fan of instead going over to Unreal Engine 5. I like more diverse tech landscape, not liking this." And then we also saw a Digital Foundry producer saying, "I'm sure I'm alone on this, but I really don't care much for Witcher 3, preferred 2, and actually preferred Cyberpunk by a fair margin. Red Engine also produced some amazing results that on PC outshine any Unreal game that is shipped, I feel, but no Unreal Engine 5 games have shipped obviously yet." Talking with Alex, "I think Shadow Warrior 3 is a good example of why this doesn't always work out. They switched to Unreal Engine 4 and the game now has many more technical hiccups compared to prior Shadow Warrior games, while looking and performing worse. It was a bad move for them." And this next proposal, I'll call it, from a lead engine developer at Guerrilla Games is just kind of funny, and I thought I'd mention it. "Hey Red Engine devs, if you're sad you don't have an engine to develop anymore, you know who's making a world-class open world engine and is hiring? Guerrilla." And yeah, so Red Engine no more, I suppose, moving forward, and everything CD Projekt Red develops will be Unreal Engine 5. And how that turns out is really unclear at the moment. But yeah, strictly looking at this as a fan of the Witcher franchise, it's exciting to see a new installment announced, even though we probably won't see it released for another 3 to 4 years at the earliest. Now, moving along to our next story, we have some unfortunate news revolving around Bungie, the soon-to-be PlayStation-owned game developer, and it still is really weird saying that. See, unfortunately, a bunch of Destiny 2 content creators were hit by, let's just call it, false DMCA takedowns, and this spurred a lot of these content creators going to social media and speaking out about this. Now, the unfortunate thing is about YouTube is that really anybody can take content down. It's something that can be easily abused, and a lot of these big companies, not necessarily Bungie, but Take-Two Interactive and so on and so forth, they all rely on third-party companies, and many times these third-party companies go overboard, in which they don't look at fair use, and they really just go after just about everything, no matter the context, no matter if it's been transformative or whatever. So that was the belief that many had with this situation, as this is not the first time that there's been copyright issues with Bungie and Destiny related content. But actually in this case it was indeed an imposter, and this is just a problem with YouTube, a problem that they've never really been able to address, and it's just the fact that anybody can take content down and impersonate a popular brand. And for now, this is a problem we'll probably continue to talk about over the years, but it's definitely great that Bungie came out with a statement addressing this and saying, hey, we have no relation at all to these people, but yes, copyright on YouTube still indeed sucks. Now, to our final story of the day, we have some updates on Battlefield 2042 and the future of this franchise. As most of you know, most of the shooters that came out last fall ended up having some pretty big trouble. Call of Duty Vanguard just wasn't very good. Battlefield 2042, I don't even know what EA was thinking, and Halo Infinite came out, it had a really good start, but has really flatlined since then, and that's just really to do with a lack of content, and I believe like 95% of the players day one are now gone. So yeah, fall shooters did not go well. But here we have Battlefield 2042, something that EA has been constantly lying about because that's just what they're very good at, and they did blame Halo Infinite on the reason why that game was a miss, at least partially, and right now internally it is being referred to as a miss. Now, we had some updates coming from Tom Henderson, well-known gaming insider. He's really been in-depth with everything Battlefield the last couple of years, and he provided some information on what's going to be happening in the future. He wrote on xfire.com, the next Battlefield game is in pre-production. One inside source has said that valuable lessons have been learned following the release of Battlefield 2042. See, the thing is, I heard that exact same thing after Battlefield 5, and yet the exact same problems happened again. And even if you go further back, Battlefield 4 had a rough launch. That game eventually did turn it around, but those valuable lessons with that one was not carried over. Battlefield 1 did have some issues as well. Battlefield Hardline, it seems like every single Battlefield title the last number of years has had some trouble, and EA DICE has just really fallen as a developer, but we'll see if these valuable lessons are actually learned. I think we'll be reverting a lot of the changes we made in Battlefield 2042, a source said. This comment could be referring to features such as the 128 player count, something that, if I remember correctly, years ago it was play tested and it was found to be a terrible idea, and yet they still did it here years later with Battlefield 2042, and it failed miserably. And the specialists that have been, well, they've been receiving harsh criticism since they were introduced, so those things could be going away, which in my opinion should have already happened long ago. Even before the game launched, people were saying that this is a mistake, this is stuff that has to be addressed, and EA was like, no, don't worry, and well, we all know what ended up happening. Original plans for the overall series direction were to have Battlefield 2042 act as a foundation for the future, with the next Battlefield game being built upon it. The next game was almost going to be like a hero shooter with specialists becoming mercenaries. Remember, that's that future direction that EA wanted to go with this franchise, turning it into something mirroring pretty much Call of Duty, Overwatch, and really all of the popular shooters out there on the market. Going away from the franchise DNA, because that certainly makes absolutely no fucking sense. Now, Tom Henderson reports that several people invited to play sessions, recent ones, believe that the changes coming to the specialist system in the next Battlefield game will tie specialists' role to classes more closely, which is a change the community wanted before Battlefield 2042 was even released. So yes, it looks like EA DICE is finally seeing the shining light, I guess that's the best way to put it, and who knows honestly what this next installment will look like. Battlefield 5 was a mess in so many ways, and Battlefield 2042 2042 ended up being a mess in so many ways. I'm sure over the coming months, and maybe even the next couple of years, Battlefield 2042 will look like an entirely different game, but many people have already moved on. That's the exact same problem that we had with Battlefield 5, because it did turn it around with the Pacific Theater. That was some really good content, but it was too little too late, and I have a feeling that's exactly what's happening here again. Especially when you have games like Battlefield 4, which came out years ago, garnering more players on Steam. That's honestly just embarrassing. Anyway, again, a big shout out to today's sponsor, Displate. Love their well-manufactured posters for all kinds of franchises from Fallout to The Witcher. If you are interested, check the links down in the description below for a discount. And I do want to know your thoughts on the topics that we discussed today. What are your expectations and maybe your hopes for a Witcher 4? Let me know down in the comment section below. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or if you found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, so do make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion on games. And again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.